listening to the best of the Martha Zoller Show. To hear the full show each day, tune in to AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN or log in to accesswdun.com and click the Listen Live button from 9 to 11 Monday through Friday. Josh McKoon is here with me right now. Josh is the Georgia GOP chairman, and he's going to spend a little time with us today. How are you?
I'm doing great, Martha. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and Josh and I have the kind of relationship that all Republicans ought to have. You know what I mean? First of all, we're friends and we're united through a lot of those things. But we've been on different sides of issues. We've supported different candidates. He helped me when I ran for Congress and then helped me after I lost, which is something I will always appreciate you for. We supported different people for chairman. I called Josh up and I said, look, I just heard you're running, but I just want you to know I'm with Rebecca, but I love you and we're friends. This is the kind of relationships we need to have in the Georgia GOP.
Absolutely.
And we're having a little trouble with that right now. And I know you're working on it.
We are.
So anyway, thank you for being here.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here, and I love the space that y'all are in. This is just wonderful.
So Nikki Haley gave an interview with Brett Baer, and I think she made a lot of sense, actually, where she said, and in fairness to her, people said she disappeared for a few weeks. Her father died. Okay, she's been off the campaign trail because she's not a candidate. She went to the convention, but her father died, and she had family stuff to take care of. And I don't begrudge her taking 2, 3, 4 weeks to get all that worked out. I don't have a problem with that. I think she gave some good advice, though. Why are we need to talk about issues. And me, as a Republican, I've given the total control to Republicans 3 times in my lifetime, and they didn't do what they promised. So how are we as the Georgia GOP going to convince people like me, who I'm going to vote Republican, but I'm still concerned about the forward-looking rather than backward-looking?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's been lost in this sort of wild ride we've been on for the last 30 days or so, I served on the platform committee at the Republican National Convention. We passed a platform that I believe in my lifetime is the most important platform document because it contains 20 actionable promises from President Trump. He was very involved in this process. He called into the platform committee meeting. Not really since the contract with America in 1994 have we had a document that makes specific promises to the American people, eliminating taxes on Social Security benefits, eliminating taxes on tips for service workers. President Trump has articulated, I think, a very clear vision of what a new Trump administration would look like. It would be an administration laser focused on whipping inflation in the first 100 days. He said, I want to see inflation come down. How's he going to do that? By unleashing American energy independence. We were a net exporter of light natural gas, liquid natural gas 4 years ago. And so this is something he's been able to do. Doing something about the fentanyl streaming across our border, killing our young people, and the, invasion of foreign, illegal alien, military age men across the southern border of the United States. The lowest recorded level of illegal immigration in American history occurred under Donald Trump's presidency. So I think he's talking clearly and powerfully about those issues. Unfortunately, the media cherry picks some of the things he talks about and tries to say that's the total focus. But I think President Trump and this campaign is very focused on a stronger America, a wealthier America, an economy that works for everyone. You may have seen this MSNBC report of the black mother in Philadelphia talking about, I work as a paralegal, I can't take care of my kids because a $2 bell pepper is $5 now. Those are the issues that President Trump, I think, is speaking to in a very powerful way, and that's what this campaign needs to be about.
No doubt about it. And my big fear, the thing that keeps me up at night, is a Hamas-style attack on a neighborhood in America imminently. Enough people have come across. You're wearing your U.S.-Israel pin. I wear a Star of David with a cross in it every day until the hostages come home. We've got to understand the kind of national security problem that we're in right now. And look, I do think I have never in my lifetime seen somebody coalesce around a candidate as fast as they went from 5 weeks ago. The New York Times was writing articles about what a terrible vice president she was. And now they think she's the greatest thing that since sliced bread. And they're writing articles about Hunter Biden's laptop, which is the weirdest thing in the world. Never seen anything like it. I think they were a little off kilter, the Trump campaign, for a week or two, a little bit off kilter. What I'm seeing now, and it kind of started with the X interview, I see that was totally about issues, no name calling, okay, just forward-looking issues. And then the event last night, or maybe it was yesterday afternoon, the one in North Carolina, was much more about issues. And that's what he's got to do. He's got to be positive, forward-looking about issues. It was that cute little moment where he picked up the little kid that was dressed like him. I don't know if you saw that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It was adorable. That side of Donald Trump, you need to see the grandpa side more. You need to see how he interacts with people more, like when he went to the Chick-fil-A, like when he went to the bodega in the Bronx. Those kinds of things he needs to do more of. And I think he will. I mean, I'm talking with the campaign about a plan we're trying to put in place with Mr. Iverster's help and others to kind of go under the radar and do local television and local radio. Because if you get Donald Trump on local radio and TV stations in these swing states, and those hosts are going to ask tough questions, but they're going to promote the heck out of it. And as people are turning towards going back to school, they're listening to local radio and local television more because they want to know what the weather is. They want to know if school's in. They want to know what happened with the high school football game. They want to know what's going on in their neighborhood. So even though, and we just got the ratings out for the cable TV people, they're in the tank, except for Fox News. Nobody's watching news anymore.
No.
Okay? So this echo chamber that if you're on Twitter or you're watching local, it's not real. What's real is the people walking past here that are on their way to take their kids to school or pick their kids up or doing things. We've got to have a message for them.
Well, and I agree with that. Obviously, a hyper-local message is really important. That's what the whole Trump Force 47 organization is built around when we're asking people to be Trump Force captains. We're not asking, like the old days, you would say, you're captain for an entire voting precinct. It's thousands of people. When you sign up to be a Trump Force 47 captain, what we're asking for is that you reach out to 25 voters, 25 conversations that you're going to have to explain why people need to get out and vote. Because there are really two issues. There's persuading people that are independent, undecided. But then the other thing for Republicans in Georgia especially is we've got to make sure all of our people turn out. Because the story of that 2021 runoff was a lack of turnout among Republican voters in the 9th and 14th congressional districts. And we have got to get every one of those folks to vote in this election. If we do that, we have made so many improvements in terms of the process of election administration. I don't think anybody's going to have the concerns that they had about 2020 in terms of fairness of the process. So if we just get out and turn out our people, we're going to win.
How do we know? I mean, do you feel confident? Because I think we can win the Senate, no problem. I think that the House will maintain in Republican control, but it'll still be tight. I think that the top of the ticket, we've still got some people to convince. Not just on our side, but I think she's still convincing her side. I mean, this whole joy and excitement and all this kind of stuff, again, is not real. Okay, it's not real. She hasn't won all those voters over either, regardless of what the polling says. So how do we make sure that, one, we get people out to vote, but they feel comfortable about the vote they're casting?
So one thing I want people to know is that the election integrity effort that the Republican National Committee and the Georgia Republican Party have engaged in, and not just here recently, but over the course of the last year, is unprecedented in American history. I checked with our staff yesterday. We've got more people booked for poll watching for this election, for early voting and election day, than we've ever done in an election. And we've got another month and a half to go to continue to recruit poll watchers and poll workers. We got 3 incredibly important bills passed and signed into law by Governor Kemp this year. It was a home run for election integrity. We've got the best legal environment we've ever had. We have over 500 attorneys who have volunteered to be part of our election integrity effort this year. We've got so many facets to this election integrity program. What I keep telling people is you can have confidence if you go in and cast your vote we're going to have a fair election. But we won't win if our people don't turn out. So there's been nothing like what we're doing in this cycle. It's never happened before, and it's inspiring to see how many people want to volunteer to be a part of it, not to mention the rules passed by our state elections board to make sure that the poll book where they check in people and write their names down, that number matches with the number of people that voted at the precinct. That's a pretty common sense thing, that poll watchers are allowed to be anywhere that ballots are being processed. In Fulton and Gwinnett and Cobb and DeKalb, that's important. So all those things are in process. There's a lot of work that's been done to have a fair election. But again, it will all be for nothing if our people don't get out and vote.
Yeah, I say every day, you need to vote. You need to parent your children and the children that are in your lives, and then you have to have a face-to-face conversation with people. You know, you've got to make sure that you're able to get the message out. Now, we got a couple of text messages that came in at 770-535-2911, and it said, the first one said, just because Republicans gain total control doesn't mean conservatives will get everything they want. It takes time. Election cycles. Right now, our resources must be used slowing down socialist Democrats like Nikki Haley and told us that all we have to do is listen to them Democrats. Don't care how long it takes to accomplish their goals. Let's concentrate on winning elections, slowing down Democrats. Rome was not built in a day. Now, I don't think Nikki Haley's a socialist Democrat.
No.
Okay.
No.
But what she said was, they tell you what they're going to do, and they do what they say they're going to do. I'm not saying that as a compliment. I'm just saying that's what they do. So we need to fight against that.
And that's what I tell people when we talk about, you know, I don't like this tweet I saw, or I'm mad about this, I'm going to take my ball and go home. The future of Western civilization is on the ballot on November the 5th. You know, the United States of America, it's been around for almost 250 years. But it's not guaranteed. We've had these generational sacrifices throughout our history to get us to this point. And we've had this enormous vacuum of leadership. Barack Obama promised to transform America, and he was on the precipice of accomplishing that with Hillary Clinton essentially being his third term. And Donald Trump came in and reversed that slide and moved us in the right direction. But if we allow another 4 years of this, I don't know, as the president says, I don't know what kind of country we're going to have left in 2028. So we've got to try to kind of get over these things, as Nikki Haley has, as Ron DeSantis has. We've seen all this great coming together. I mean, you look at Governor Kemp's reaction to the rally, last 2 Saturdays ago, where he said, look, the most important thing is defeating Kamala Harris. And so we're all united on that. So if all of these folks can get there, I would hope that our rank and file based supporters can get there too. We've got to pull together if we're going to be able to win.
Yeah, and I do think obviously the untold or unknown thing is President Trump. Okay, and I know that he's going to do. I see the shift in his behavior, and I don't mean that he's not a bad person. He is what he is, and you're not going to control him. But at the same time, I think he understands and he wants to win. And so he's going to go forward. What he's got to do is get the people that are still unsure to come in. And he's going to do that by talking policy.
And the one other thing I want to note, Martha, you know, it's been about 30 days since Donald Trump was almost murdered on live television. And I've been kind of stunned at the lack of discussion around that. I mean, here's a guy, he's in the hospital Saturday afternoon calling Michael Whatley saying, I need to be in that convention center on Monday. Never took a break, has been campaigning this whole time. Imagine if you or I or somebody we care about was in that situation. You'd want to take some time to process what you've been through. So I think extending a little grace to somebody that's been through something like that is appropriate.
It's where North Georgia comes to talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Last month, Social Security trustees reported that Social Security Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund, a crucial source of economic security for 59 million Americans, will be unable to pay its promised benefits in 2033. Without change, retired Americans could face a projected automatic benefit cut of 21% in 2033.
It is the Martha Zoller Show, and that is Congressman Drew Ferguson, and he is with me today. He is a congressman from Middle Georgia, and we just love having him with us today. How are you, Drew?
I am great, Martha. Hope you are, and let me tell you what an honor it is to be on the show with you.
Well, thank you very much. And I wanted to have you on because, we've crossed paths a lot over the number of years that you've been involved in politics, and it's always great to talk to you. And you're going to be retiring at the end of this year, and wanted to have an opportunity to just kind of talk to you about the state of things. And it's ironic. My husband signed up for Social Security benefits yesterday because he's going to turn 70. We had decided to wait until 70 to do that. We're still working, all that kind of stuff. But it's interesting. It's interesting where we are, that we continue to see this train coming down the pike and coming down the track, and we're not doing anything about it.
Well, it is a challenging issue to deal with for sure. And what I have seen long before even I got on the Ways and Means Committee and became the chairman of the Social Security Subcommittee is that both sides were, in my opinion, intellectually dishonest, intended to use this as a political weapon. And the only way that this is going to get solved is in a thoughtful, bipartisan manner, probably through a commission using both the House and the Senate. And then we've got to have the courage to really tell the American people the state of the program. And I think the biggest problem that we're going to have to face is really closing the divide between what Republicans see with this and what Democrats do. Republicans first believe we need to save the program for retirees and those close to retirement. And my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, led by John Larson from Connecticut, truly believe that they should expand Social Security. And it's hard to justify expanding a program that is on the verge of insolvency. And so I think that's why I think in order to fix this, it's going to take some bravery, it's going to take political courage, it's going to take intellectual honesty, and it's going to take both sides laying down, agree not to use this as a political weapon, because it's not fair to the American public, because doing nothing ensures that Americans will take a cut in their benefits, and our most vulnerable folks are going to feel that in a very real way.
Well, in 2011, Marco Rubio made a speech out at the Reagan Library, and it didn't get covered because Nancy Reagan fell that day. And so the story that came out of there was that she fell, not that he gave this speech on what we need to do about Social Security. And basically it was three planks. It was that if you're 55 and older, nothing should change for you. You've been planning your whole life, and we should figure out a way to pay for that. If you're 40 to 55, there ought to be some kind of hybrid program that you can be a part of. And then if you're under 40, you're still going to have to pay for grandma because we made the promise to her. But there need to be something completely different for you. And I think it made perfect sense, but we still, 13 years later, we can't even have the discussion. So you're a really new member of Congress, really. You haven't been up there that long. You're going to be leaving at the end of this term. What was the biggest surprise that you had related to things like Social Security? And then I want to talk about tax reform.
So related to Social Security, and my biggest surprise being in Congress, really is how different the country views things based off of geographical region. The Northeast just views things so differently than the Southeast. And folks down here in the South, and I'll just call it the Southeastern Conference states, because I am a Bulldog, and it's important to talk about the Southeastern Conference. But we view things very different than our citizens out on the left coast. And then if you try to take California, Oregon, and Washington State and lay that over North Dakota all the way down to Texas, it just simply doesn't fit. And so trying to get common themes and common messages that resonate with all of those different regions has been one of the biggest surprises to me.
So you were very involved in helping to pass the tax cuts in 2017.
Yes.
And got involved in politics, really, in a lot of different ways related to that and other issues. We're coming up on the deadline on those tax cuts. You won't be in Congress next year, but what do you think about the ability to be able to extend those tax cuts?
So let me say this. There are going to be $4.6 trillion, maybe a little bit more, of tax policy on the table. Think about that for a minute. $4.6 trillion of tax policy over the next 10 years. But we're going to make the decisions on that next year. Congress will. There are a couple of things here that I think are important to keep in mind, and that is the evolving body of Congress itself. If every member that's running for reelection wins on the House GOP side, and let me say that again, if everybody that's running for office wins, there will only be 84 members of the House GOP that were there when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was written. That's that's less than half, okay? Similar type numbers on the Democrat side. The environment is different. Members are different. There's a different focus. And we very well could be in a situation where we are in divided government. So if that is the case, there are two scenarios that go through with tax reform. Number one, let's assume that for a minute that President Trump is back in office. This is a huge priority to him, and he's going to be very much focused on making America competitive on the global stage and making sure that we do things that keep America at the forefront of innovation, manufacturing, and in the digital economy. And so I think that his weight is going to carry an awful lot with Republicans on how that policy is shaped. And it should. As the occupant of the White House, he should have a big say in that. But I think but one thing that has changed dramatically is the Republican focus internally on deficit reduction. Keep in mind, if we're going to do major tax reform with all Republicans, it will have to be done through reconciliation. We saw the Democrats do this with the Inflation Reduction Act, which is one of the most horrible oxymorons I've ever heard of in my life. But anyway, we did it with Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017. The challenge will be is that members now are very focused on deficit reduction, particularly related to the mandatory spending side of the equation, many of the entitlement programs that are out there, the money that goes out the door before Congress can appropriate it. So there's going to have to be a balance struck between the tax revenue and deficit reduction. If we are in divided government, there's going to have to be a grand compromise because Republicans and Democrats, if they don't do anything before before December 31st of 2025, all of these provisions expire. And when I say all of them, I'm talking about the pass-through rates for small businesses, the corporate rate for larger businesses, all of our protections around where companies house their intellectual property, something that's been so important to making sure that businesses locate in America as opposed to offshoring their headquarters. All of those things, including the child tax credits, all expire. And that means that every American and every business in America is going to have a tax problem that they have to face. And the real challenge is how then do you cobble together a compromise plan that increases permanency in parts of the tax code. Our colleagues on the other side of the aisle are certainly going to demand more spending on the child tax credit, if not other social programs. And then I think to make the numbers work, you're going to have a Frankenstein of a bill that has a lot of deadlines and cliffs out in years 2, 4, 6, and 8 that Congress is going to have to deal with. So the difference between 2017, it was a laser focus on making America competitive and making sure that Americans got to keep more of their money in their pocket. This is going to be a different conversation, and it's hard to predict because you don't know if Republicans are going to win the White House, the House, and the Senate, or if we're going to be in divided government. So it's going to be a complex time for us, but a very important time for America.
Yeah, and honestly, we got to get back to where we can pass a budget on time. I mean, we're going to end up with some kind of CR again this year, and we can't run a government this way. If you take 2019 spending and adjust it for inflation, it's roughly $5.4 trillion, maybe $5.5 trillion. We've got a budget out there that's been proposed as over $7 trillion still. It's like we're still in COVID. And there is nobody out there that I see other than people like you who are not in the majority, even though Republicans are in the majority, that will even talk about the fact that we don't have a revenue problem. We've got a spending problem.
Martha, I would love to refer you to my colleague and good friend from Texas, Jody Arrington, chairman of the Budget Committee, and really and I would encourage viewers to really look at what the Budget Committee has been doing. The number that you just threw out there, keep in mind, almost 80% of that, it's not quite there, but pretty close to 80% of it, of that $7 trillion is in the mandatory spending.
Yep.
Okay, so we can talk about budgets, but we're talking about 20% of the government spending. And keep this in mind, once you pay for the military, okay, which is the primary responsibility of the federal government, everything else is borrowed money. So mandatory spending is squeezing out all of our ability to address a lot of the issues that we want to as Americans. That is why it is so important that we fix Social Security. Right now, it has a small draw on the general fund, but it is not when the trust fund ends. It's gonna require either additional revenue in the form of new taxes or continued borrowing, which neither is good.
Well, Drew,
Medicare is a disaster.
Yeah, it's already 45 or 48% of Medicare comes out of the general fund. I mean,
yes, it's unsustainable.
Yeah, it's unsustainable, and we've got to put it all on the table. And I know you're going to work hard throughout the rest of your time. We're going to miss your service, but I respect you because you're doing what is required, which is being a citizen legislator, and I appreciate that very much, Drew.
Well, thank you, Martha. It's been an honor to do this. I didn't mean to do this. I didn't mean to be mayor of West Point, Georgia. Things happen. God puts you in the right place at the right time. But I can lay my head down on the pillow at night knowing that we served our fellow Georgians well.
Drew Ferguson, wish the best for you and your family, and we'll talk again before you get out of here.
Thanks, Martha. Look forward to the conversation in the near future.
And I look forward to connecting with Jody Aronson, too. That'd be great. That'd be a great discussion.
He's fantastic and has got his eye on the ball, and it's the strongest voice that we have on these issues.
Putting the talk in news talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Joining me right now is Steve Moore, and we have not talked to Steve in a couple of weeks since all this craziness happened with Kamala Harris, and he's been really busy because I've seen him everywhere. But I find it so interesting, Steve, is that I have never seen a coalescing around somebody as fast as I have around Kamala Harris, and I got to believe it's got the Trump campaign a little off kilter. And what I'm hearing from people around me is to tell Donald Trump, just talk about the issues, look forward, and be ready to hit the ground running after the Democratic convention. What do you think?
Well, good to be with you, Martha. You're right. There is a media love affair with Kamala. It's amazing. You know, there was a Washington Post poll out back in, I think, April that Kamala was rated by the American people one of the worst vice presidents in American history, and all of a sudden, suddenly, with all this media adoration, they treat her like she's Mother Teresa. Look, that shine is going to come off as soon as people we remind people exactly what she wants to do, everything from reparations to single-payer health system where you would lose your health insurance and have to go into the government system, to getting rid of the filibuster, to packing the Supreme Court, to ending fracking. I know she says she's for that now, but she's for it after she was against it, and on and on. We estimate she would add about $3 trillion to the national debt, which would relaunch inflation like we've never seen before. If you think the last 4 years were bad, wait till you have 4 years of Kamala Harris, God forbid. So I think one of the things that I think the Trump campaign needs to do is really just this one theme of the American people of Georgia, people of Arizona, people of Michigan, people of Pennsylvania, do you really want 4 more years of what we just lived through with, a massive increase in our national debt, a massive increase in the prices of everything, the fact that, the wages of American workers have not kept pace with inflation? That's really what's on the ballot. 4 more years of this. And, I think the American people will certainly decide that things were a lot better when Trump was president, whether you like Trump or not. And I have to say, I think Trump, at this point, less Trump is better than more Trump. Martha.
No,
I think.
So there was this great guy named Paul James Jr. that was on Fox and Friends this morning. He's a fracking engineer. Did you see? His name's Paul James Jr. He's a fracking engineer. He's an African-American male that's supporting Donald Trump. And he was so interesting because he said, I got out of school in 2010 and I knew Donald Trump from the pop culture world, really. That's how I knew Donald Trump. He says, but I was doing better. And he says, what I would, and Lawrence Jones asked him what advice he would give. He said, just talk about the future. We don't care about the past. We're too busy working to care about the past if we have a job. All we want to know is, are you going to keep doing for us what you did for us before? Because I'm better off because of what you did before. And I think that's a good message. That's a good message.
Yeah, I think so, too. And, I want all of your listeners, Martha, to go to unleashprosperitynow.com. That's unleashprosperitynow.com. And I want people to pull down what we call our chart book. It's a comparison in 24 charts of Trump versus Biden on the economy. And what you find is that on, I think, 22 of the 24, the economy was better in terms of these measurements under Trump than Biden. That includes real take-home pay for workers, includes the stock market, includes small business conditions, it includes interest rates, the price of eggs, the price of gasoline, all of these different measures, illegal immigration now versus then. And every one of them was much better under Trump than Biden. And so I think it really needs to be about the record. So people should download that. It's free. It costs nothing. Just Unleash Prosperity Now. And you can get that. And it's something every American needs to be aware of, because the Democrats want to make this about personality and about abortion, right? We want to make it about the economy, the kitchen table issues that every American cares about. And if it is an election about the economy, then Trump will win in a decisive manner. If it's about social issues and who do you like better and things like that, then the race is in doubt.
Yeah, and I think we're going to look, I'm not worried. All right, this is clearly something I've never seen before, but I know that a lot of people, let's just be very clear. The progressive left knows what they're going to do. The MAGA Republicans knows what they're going to do. But it was very heartening to hear from this young man this morning who says, look, people like me are just now starting to pay attention. And we took a poll today, and the biggest concern I've got, and while it's not scientific, was that 20% of people said they may not vote. And that is, that is heavily weighted. If you look at the number of Christian conservatives that don't vote, it's shocking. So we have got work to do about getting our people out to vote. Because if we get our people out to vote, we win.
I couldn't agree more. There's more of us than there are of them. This is a center-right country. It's not a center-left country. And if you look, just think about this, Martha. When you pair Kamala Harris, who was the most liberal vote in the United States Senate when she was in the Senate, she was to the left of Bernie Sanders, and she was to the left of Elizabeth Warren. So you can't get anyone more left-wing, more socialistic than Kamala Harris. And then you pair her with arguably the worst governor in America, Dan Walz, who, by the way, was a complete lockdown artist. He kept the Minnesota economy and the schools and the churches shut down for well over 6 months, long after Georgia and Texas and Tennessee opened up their economies. And so, you could not pay. This is probably the most anti-business ticket in American history. And that's saying a lot. And so if that's what the American people want, then, I just want to make sure that they
You want to know
have
another governor that was actually worse than Tim Walz about schools was Andy Beshear. Andy Beshear kept Kentucky schools closed for a year.
That's true.
A full
That's
year.
True.
My grandkids live in Lexington, Kentucky, 3 of my grandkids, and they were out of school until April of 2021.
Wow.
And
that's great. What a disgrace.
And I tell you, James is doing great. He was my one that was in kindergarten and first grade when this happened.
Yep.
But he had some real difficulty socializing after they got back into school. He still has a lot of reticence about going new places and doing new things. And I tie it all back to all the time. Now, thankfully, our kids were able to create one of those classroom pod things where they brought a teacher in and they did all that. But that's because they had the resources to do it. But there are a lot of kids that didn't have that. And that is the biggest travesty of the entire COVID debacle.
It was the greatest episode of national child abuse in the history of this country. And, the red states, for the most part, opened up.
Yep.
And the blue states left there, and then they didn't care. They care more about, teachers' unions than they do about kids. So, look, I think it's going to be a battle. I think states like Georgia and I think states like Arizona and Michigan and Pennsylvania obviously are the ones that are going to decide this election. That's why I love coming on your show, just to remind people what's at stake. Because I don't want to see on November 7th people waking up and saying, "Oh my God, we're really going to have 4 years of Kamala Harris and like a second Biden term? Is that what Americans really want?" But when you see this there's no focus right now on the issues. It's Kamala, she's so wonderful. First black woman ever elected president. Blah blah blah. I mean, this is about policy. This is about the future of our country.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think that is extremely important that we understand. And look, we got to be patient. Even though we're running out of time, we still have to be patient because they're going to get all the coverage between now and the end of the Democratic convention.
That's right.
And Trump needs to do more. The talk last night on X was great, even though it was long. It was policy driven. And it was good, and pieces of that will be used. He needs to continue doing those kind of interviews, but he needs to be ready to hit the ground running once the Democratic convention is over.
And we will be.
I know you will be. All right, Steve, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Martha. Have a great week.
To hear the full versions of last week's Martha Zoller shows, go to the podcast page at accesswdun.com, and you can follow me on social media at Martha Zoller.